Hello and welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode we saw the end of that micro-heavy battle where our militia took on the Spanish army and got them down to just their pikes. We couldn't finish them off though and then suffered an unexpected defeat as the time limit ran out. We discovered the location of the Spanish main force at Gibraltar and sent ships to blockade their ports so that they couldn't take any action against us. And then General Vos took his army to attack Brussels, attacking the army already weakened by our militia. We started the battle by destroying their mortars, which gave us a definitive advantage, and the enemy's low morale army basically broke the second we made contact, bringing us victory. Vos went back to Paris to finish off the armies of Savoy, who'd been making a cheeky attack. In America, Nassau was able to take Cuba from the Spanish and then made a lightning attack against Florida, capturing that as well. The Spanish are on the back foot. Let's continue. Well, I can see the temptation, good sir, but remember that a lot of these troops are more tied to Nassau than to the company. No doubt the loot he doles out to them has made them wealthier than those of their station should be, and now they consider their pay to be underwhelming. Nassau has served me well, but his lease of life could expire any day now, if you understand my meaning. When he goes, we will unfortunately lose one of our assets, and his men don't understand that it was I giving him orders, so they'll probably think we are now doomed. And the same goes, before you ask, of Admiral Calember. He's a veteran of the old company, and quite frankly doesn't fit so well into the new one. I don't think he can be relied upon much longer, both because of his advanced age, and because we get weekly requests for him to run this or that sortie in Europe or the East Indies, as if that was our company's concern. Anyway, I propose that we focus on the civil development of all of our properties, so that when such a time comes as our military fortune cannot be relied upon, there is sufficient fortune in gold to weather whatever storms may come. In this way, our company will grow rich, and us with it. And I suppose the king will be happy that his nation is doing so well, etc. After an uneventful end-turn sequence, we're now in the next turn, where Nassau has the chance to attack the Spanish. Their army, as you may remember, was further south in Florida, but is now moving up, so I thought I might as well move out and give them a battle. I thought I would have an overwhelming advantage here. You can see I have tons more infantry than the enemy, and I have lots of artillery compared to them, so I thought I was just going to go out here and maybe even auto-resolve, but actually, we only have a small advantage on the balance bar, so I thought might as well actually fight this one ourselves and try and destroy them with absolutely minimal losses so that that other Spanish army to the north can't give us any surprises. So my deployment is across a couple of hills, basically a hill on the left and right of the line, and the centre of the line is in the dip in the middle, supported with the pikes right behind them. On the extreme left we also have a walled position where the irregulars are currently sitting, and there's this mysterious ancient Greek temple which has teleported its way to Florida, so we might be able to use that as well. The enemy are also deployed on a hill to begin with, sitting behind their artillery who are going to try and bombard us, but the AI seems to know that I have a distinct artillery advantage, having two sets of demi-cannons and some 12-pounders versus their demi-cannons, so they are going to advance. Luckily for them, they'll advance under cover because there are hills in the middle of the map as well, so I can't see them most of the time. Their artillery start pounding me, and they actually get a lucky hit right away, taking out a bunch of my pikes there. Quite unfortunate considering how inaccurate the demi-cannons are, that they had actually hit something at their maximum range. I'm going to fire back and I actually get lucky as well. I get a direct hit on one of their cannons. That's going to destroy the piece and mean they can't use it. Fantastic news. So any more lucky hits are now even less likely to occur. So the enemy started their attack by sending their cavalry to just rush forwards, a classic blunder from the AI. So these guys are just going to run into the line of sight of my line infantry here in these forested hills. So we got bombarded with the shot, and actually my volleys against them as they advanced didn't do all that much. We killed a couple of their cav, but we didn't have the usual morale shock that often sends cav just reeling backwards. So they are going to charge all the way in. I think because they were coming uphill, my men couldn't really see them until it was too late. So they make the impact, and now Nassau is going to have to go in with his own cavalry to try and counter this. Of course, we do have the bayonets, so now that we've bogged their cav down, we can use our line infantry to just swamp them, especially because the enemy's line infantry are far behind, so we don't need to commit any line infantry to ranged battling. We can bring men in to fight with those cav. On the other side of the field, the enemy's general was trying to make a cheeky attack on our left flank, but my auxiliary irregulars got inside this temple and just blasted them, and they ran off. That temple's not particularly good as a garrison point because most troops can't actually fire from it, so I'm going to come out pretty soon. The enemy's line infantry are getting close, but they're still not in range. We need to finish off this cavalry engagement and get ready, because the line battle is about to start. Luckily, at this moment, the enemy's cav give up and retreat with their survivors, of which there are not particularly many, since the line infantry did manage to bring a lot down with their bayonets, and Nassau, fortunately, not being injured in that combat. So now it's time to start the line battle. I can redirect my artillery to fire at the enemy because I'm on a hill above them. I have great line of sight over the top of my own lines, so that's going to really help out. You can see I'm here bringing those irregulars out of the temple to outflank the enemy on this side. I'm outflanking them on both sides of the line, in fact, and already some of the enemy units starting to fall back. The guys on their extreme left who are being shot by too many of my own men. While that goes on, my cavalry are going to go right behind their lines, and here we found their demi-cannons, which were being moved forward onto the next hill. They got taken down easily. My mounted auxiliaries are going to come up and give a cheeky volley into the back of the enemy's line infantry. Only does a tiny bit of damage, but actually seems to rout that unit. That's the same unit that routed earlier. They came back from routing and are going to do that several times. We turned around, gave another volley to the enemy's general, who was hanging around back here as well. And now we're going to use both of my cavalry units to try and take out that general. The provincial cavalry get them stuck in melee, and then the auxiliaries charge down with a massive attack down that hill, slashing at them with axes and killing the enemy's general right away. So that's fantastic news. The enemy's morale is now going to be dropping rapidly, and this cavalry will just stay here in order to finish off the general's guards and rout them off the field. So now really we just need to finish off the enemy's infantry. We have a massive infantry advantage, so we just have to keep firing at them until they all happen to be routing at the same time. This unit here, coming back from routing for the third time, sneaking up the hill. It doesn't really have line of sight on me because it's trying to fire at a unit it can barely see, and as a result, our casualty is absolutely minimal in this particular engagement. The enemies will be minimal as well, but they are taking flanking fire from other units which will damage them. And finally I decided to just charge over this hill with Nassau riding the wave of that charge to just smash into that enemy unit, and the enemy's regiment just disappears under our troops, completely trampled and crushed by that charge. So that unit is annihilated, and the rest of the enemy's army is going to be chased off by the rest of my cavalry as well at the same time. So right now their army is destroyed. It's a victory for Nassau. Quite minimal losses, the enemy losing 10 times our losses. Fantastic news. And the leading unit in this battle, the mounted auxiliary, is losing just 2 men, getting 150 or so kills. Fantastic performance from them. So we have completely crushed the Spanish in Florida. Our campaign in North America is going great. Wonderful, wonderful. But what are we going to do with it? There have been so many new colonization drives from the West India Company that there are barely any left who wish to take the offer. We can't all sail off to America. But that aside, this is lovely news. We've made the Spanish pay their debt to us with the most lavish rate of interest. I think I shall soon see my people into a second golden age, and there is even a real chance that this will become our new standard of normality. Our union of provinces could become a union of nations, of peoples across the world. Our stadtholders and companies would be like the government to the governments. We would oversee it all, control it all, profit from it all. Oh, one thing at a time, I suppose. A few Spanish survivors moved south after the battle, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to chase them down. I wouldn't want to chase them down anyway, because although they can raid that plantation, I need to go back to the settlement, because the Spanish army to the north could of course just storm it if I actually left it unguarded right now. So we need to stay in there until the area is safe, so we'll just camp out and see what that Spanish army does. Now in Florida, I mentioned last time, there's supposed to be a port to the northwest, but it's actually not been developed yet. Extra channels become available on the map over time, and it's actually going to be a really long time before we get to having a port in Florida, which is a shame because it means we can't export the trade goods which we get here, of which there are quite a few. So we are going to have to either wait a very long time or capture another province that does have a port in North America so we can do those exports. Now jumping back to Europe, Vos is on the warpath because I've decided I'm just going to end Savoy. I don't think I'm going to be able to get peace with them ever because they keep making these outrageous demands. So the only way to stop this threat coming down from this little corner is to actually go in there and just destroy them. So Vos is doing just that. At first I thought I'd camp out near these British armies and hope that Savoy came out to fight me because Britain is also at war with Savoy. But I figured they probably won't come out. Their army is quite small and I don't think they can really afford a bigger army, so they might just camp now. So I thought, well, I'll just go in and take them out. My army is better than theirs, even if they include a garrison once we arrive. So next turn I'll be able to make that attack. Now as we move on, we see a little bit of action from Spain. One unit moving out of their main force there for unknown reasons, and their force in Florida moving north to be right next to Nassau. I thought they would raid our territory, but they didn't, so that's fantastic. And of course we can now attack them. I was just checking public order to make sure it's fine to leave. It's very fine to leave, absolutely sorted for public order here. So this army for some reason stands and fights, so we wipe it out. We actually lose more men than them, but still not losing many troops in absolute terms. So with them gone, so there's no threat from the south, I can now move right up to the border with the next Spanish province, Georgia, so that they can't just rush and attack me, and in fact if I want to, I can attack them next turn. Turning our attention now to Calambar, you might remember he was raiding the Spanish trade with New Spain, but that trade seems to have stopped for some reason, and I'm looking around here trying to see if there's any other trade around the place I could raid, and it doesn't look like it, and there's also no enemy fleets as far as we know of to engage, so really this giant and expensive to upkeep navy is being wasted just hanging around. So I thought I'd look for something for it to do in another theatre, and I spotted here the Spanish clearly have this trade node occupied with at least a few ships, so I thought I might as well just send my giant fleet to go and obliterate whatever's there, and then perhaps leave a ship behind in order to capture that trade node as an added bonus, so denying income to the Spanish, getting some for ourselves. It will mean that Calambar is going to be gone for a few turns, so hopefully nothing bad will happen in the Americas while he's away that will require the attention of a big fleet. Now jumping over to Vos, he's got his movement points back, so it's time to attack Turin, the capital of the Savoy Kingdom. Inside, the enemy army is pretty powerful, even having an advantage over us apparently. They've got 3 squads of mortars, which is quite impressive. They've also got these invalid battalions, which are sort of similar to line infantry, a little bit higher in the attack and lesser in morale. Overall, it looks like a sort of standard army, but ours is more professional and more experienced, and of course the enemy has a lot of militia and armed citizenry, which aren't all that good in a prolonged line battle, so I don't feel too intimidated by this force. I am going to just besiege them though, to see if they will attack me, since they technically have the advantage. That way I don't have to attack under mortar fire, I can do the usual runaway strategy. Now, France have a message for us. They want to go back to war, and they're calling in basically half of the world's major powers to try and join them. Really luckily for me, they didn't. So that's a turn of events that we didn't really need right now, because of course France have Alsace-Lorraine and can attack my home territories, and there's nothing in between me and them. We also see a Spanish fleet. I thought it might be coming west to attack my blockade, but no, they're just doing nothing, so my blockade will stand. Now, before we can do anything about France, Savoy do indeed sally out. So what I really need to do is to have Vos rush back towards Alsace-Lorraine as fast as possible, and try and cut off any attacks the French might make. They might even make them in the start of the next turn, so I wouldn't be able to get back in time. Very dangerous, so we need to fight this battle and win with an army ready to fight another battle right away afterwards.
You've seen this, haven't you? I thought it was a joke, but it bears the mark of their royal envoy. They seriously think all these powers, Austria, the Maratha Confederacy, they think we will take Paris back for them. They clearly don't keep their ear to the ground, since most of these people were happy to see France fall. Why would anyone shed blood to restore a nation that openly makes war in Europe? At least the Dutch have the sense to keep their warmongering for the colonies. This is just silly. Short of just declaring war on France, I don't think there's anything the king will wish to send in reply. I say we just keep it to ourselves. In fact, I might take it home. I can bring it out to get people laughing at parties.
So my line arrays itself on the field ready for battle, and you'll notice it's facing the wrong direction because right away we're going to be moving away from the enemy's deployment zone to make sure that their mortars aren't in range. And actually they couldn't hit us right from the very beginning. I was fine to stay where I was. This battlefield's particularly large, so the enemy can't hit me from their deployment zone with those mortars. Extra useful because with so many mortars they could do a lot of damage. So now that we're out of their range, the enemy will be forced to form up their army and walk it across the field towards us, and we can set up our demi-cannons and even take a few shots at them on the way. So that is all good. So I've moved my army a little bit further forward from where it was earlier in order to have some space to maneuver and space to set up the guns. And as almost expected of the AI now, we see the enemy's mortar teams charging across the battlefield towards us, eager for battle apparently. Not one, not two, but 3 mortar teams, all of them coming to fight with my line on their own ahead of their army. So I don't know why the AI does this, why it can't just use them like a normal unit once they've dropped their siege pieces. They've become some form of berserk unit and are going to have a go at the line. Of course, the whole line going to open up on them as they come in. They're so far forward that they're not even going to buy time for the following troops by making me fire a shot and then having to reload. If they'd come just ahead of their line, there might have been a reason for them to sacrifice themselves. But right here, it's just a pure sacrifice. Here comes more of them, not put off by the fact that the first set of guys was mown down and then sent back. These guys are going to have another go. This is 2 regiments together, so shots missing the first regiment will kill the second, and they both at the same time decide that this is actually a bad idea, and many of them lose their lives for having even tried. So that's the start of the battle over. Now it's time to get some real fighting started as the enemy start to move up with actual units. They brought in 2 units of cav. One ran across the face of my line, the other appeared to be going for a flank attack on my far right. Now the one that's coming in right towards the line isn't going to have a very easy time of it because all of the units in the line will get to take shots at it, and immediately they start losing men and they're not happy about it whatsoever. So they rout before they reach combat. They're going to come back from routing a couple of times though, so that's not the end of that. Meanwhile, back on the flank, that enemy cavalry unit sneaking through the gap between my infantry and cav. I'm going to send my cav to try and engage them. They went the wrong way to start with for some reason, finally chasing the enemy. I'm also folding the end of the infantry line to try and receive this charge properly, but I did this too slowly. The enemy are going to catch this line infantry unit out of formation, even basically getting a rear charge there. Not very nice at all for this infantry unit, but of course we are bayonet armed, and now that we've stopped the enemy, the cavalry I ordered to attack will hit the enemy's cav in the rear, so that's going to be a very damaging attack. So the bayonets will get to work on them while the cavalry do the business, and the enemy are going to try and escape from this by running right through the line, as you can see, just coming through my line infantry unit into the gap behind my line. From there, more rear attacks they could make, but my cavalry are all over them now. We're going to keep on them and destroy them quite easily with help from the regular line infantry, so that's all fine. Meanwhile, in the background, you can see that other unit of cavalry, which had already been routed, was having another go at charging the line and failing once again. And around this point, the enemy's actual army is starting to arrive, so we might be about to see some line battling action. But their formation is very strange. They've got loads of units in an almost reserve position at the back. You can see on the minimap in the top right, it's kind of like a hook facing away from us. So I'm not 100% sure what they're doing, but I'm fairly sure those units at the back are going the wrong way and aren't really going to help out in this line battle. There's that unit of cav making yet another attempt to charge the line and getting destroyed for the third and final time, this time shattering and will now finally leave the field. But my men have new targets, so it's not so bad to lose those guys to shoot at. We'll start firing at their actual infantry now. Some of them are going to set up for line battling there, so it's time for some proper line battling action. Meanwhile, on the far right, my cavalry are just sneaking around the edge of the map because I realised these troops at the back of the enemy's hook are actually just following those cavalry. They want to engage them, so I thought I'll just send those cavalry to the back corner of the map or something and pull away all of those men from the fight. Meanwhile, at the actual fight, it's just absolute chaos. The enemy not really choosing to form up, just running about all over the place in front of my line at really close range as well. We're getting some shots on them for free, so this is great news. This unit of armed citizenry runs up to my men, stands right in front of them, and takes a volley of musketry to the face. Not very good from them. But now the enemy are going to switch tactics and do pure melee charges. Here, they get started with some cavalry, hitting my line, and of course while they're engaging those cavalry they can't fire. So that means it's going to help out their other units who can now charge in without being shot. These armed citizens just piling through my line. There's so many of them. They can get so much momentum. They just absolutely pierce our firing line, getting all the way through and surrounding our troops. So now it's up to the superior training and equipment of my men to just hold against that melee attack. They do have one unit still line battling with us right on the end of the line, but I've got more units out of combat there who'll be able to win in a prolonged engagement. And at that moment the enemy general is killed. I'd sent a unit of cav around the back of the enemy's army to look for their general. We caught him out in the open and took him down in straight combat, so well done from my cavalry. Now their invalid battalions were coming in through this forest on the left end of my line. I've got my cavalry to just engage them in melee, hoping I'll be able to win out. The enemy do not have bayonets, so we're going to be far superior in melee, and by just ignoring them from now on, I can take all of the units that would have been line battling those men to come and fire on the remaining enemy units in the centre. They've got one unit there firing at us, the rest already in melee, so we can fire at the backs of the enemy units in melee, which will be great. That melee is starting to clear up a little bit now. The enemy who broke through have routed, and now it's just the enemies on the front to deal with, and our lines are getting their act together. They're starting to press forward, forming proper solid lines of bayonet armed troops and just poking the enemy backwards, slowly but surely reclaiming our position and killing enemies all the way. It's looking good right now. I've also got more cavalry available to just keep smashing these enemy units who are out in the open. Overall, this main part of the fight is very rapidly swinging in our favour. The enemy needs to reinforce that position with more troops to exploit any advantages they have, but they're all busy. These ones firing at some guys who I had chasing routing units, and the other ones, of course, just chasing my cavalry at the back of the map. My cav now right at the back corner on a little hill, attracting away enemy units. Overall, the enemy have really messed this one up. So this is the might of Savoy that has the stadtholders so worried. I think next time they order me to bring a whole army against a few lines of old men, I will not listen. Now the French have seen what a fool I have been made and will try to piece together their sundered nation. Well, I am behind the Alps now. If it all goes wrong, I rather think we're well protected enough to just stay here. The stadtholders won't be doing any harm to us here, especially if they suddenly find themselves swearing their lives to King Louis. Worth thinking about. But first, let's tread the straight and narrow and get this city onto its knees. Form a new line on me. Sound the order. We'll sweep them back into their squads. So the enemy's engaged infantry are basically finished off pretty quickly now. We surround and destroy the units near the front line, and now you can see I'm actually stopping that engagement in order to reform. I hadn't even finished off that unit there, in fact. The enemy still have lots of units all over the place, just wandering around, and things are getting a bit chaotic, so I'm going to get all of my men back into a line, stop chasing anyone in melee, and make sure we don't have any units exposed out in the open who could actually be shot at by enemy units, and have an even engagement. Basically, we want to make sure we always have our full strength being brought to bear against these single enemy units we're encountering. So I've reformed the line there, finishing off that unit who the cavalry didn't finish off, and now I just push forwards across the entire battlefield, one by one destroying any enemy units who are still wandering around. There goes another one there, routing in the face of superior firepower. Their last units now finally coming to engage in my line, including some line infantry, some armed citizenry, and some invalid battalions, and we're just going to get ready to completely destroy them. I got bored of firing at them eventually and decided with these citizens we can just totally overwhelm them with this gigantic cavalry charge, bringing a couple of companies together to just flatten this unit of armed citizenry. They disappear beneath the horsemen and immediately will take hundreds of casualties in that combat. following on from the success of that melee attack, I'm going to make melee attacks basically on all of the enemy's remaining units. We have giant numerical advantage, so we're just going to try and overwhelm the enemy. This is a bit of a deadly strategy because you do lose men quite fast in melee, but my theory is that the enemy will rout quite quickly because we can just hit them from all sides with everything and destroy them. Here you can see on the end of the line, General Vos himself coming in to fight in this final bit of combat, hoping to get some personal contribution to the slaughter in there. And pretty soon, the remaining enemy units do rout, and that's the end of the battle. Our losses around 800, the enemy's around 4,000, a fantastic result for Vos's army. And right there, that's the main force of Savoy completely crushed. You can see two leading regiments, two squads of line infantry with massive kills. They lost a lot as well. I think that must be from a melee fighting. So for every man we lost, we took a lot of enemies with us. A fantastically valiant performance from the troops of Vos there. So that's the end of Savoy. We're jumping now into the start of the next turn, where the Barbary states are suddenly causing me an issue. They're raiding my trade and have sent ships to occupy this port at Marseille, which actually I was trading out of, so that is a problem. We're going to have to use our naval power to try and deal with them without letting the Spanish out. We'll see how we can do that in a future episode. Right now, let's look back to Amsterdam, where I've just finished researching the military syllabus, a really important tech because it lets you build the drill school, and with the drill school you can research fire by rank, which is the most important technology in the game. So we're going to go and try and get that as soon as possible. We learn here that our minister in India, Grasdyke, is getting a little bit tired of the harsh Indian climate, which is actually making him worse at his job. So that's a shame to learn. We also learn that Vos is increasing his stats yet further after that victory against Savoy. So Savoy just have some survivors inside Turin. They wouldn't surrender, which I thought was a little bit of a bad decision, and we're just going to kill them as a result. So Turin is ours, Savoy is captured. Yet more increased traits for Vos, getting better and better as a leader. And we learn here that Savoy as a nation has now been destroyed, so that's one way to get peace. But we immediately see here that the Spanish have troops in Milan just to the east. I did not expect that. That's actually a spanner in the works because, as I mentioned, what I want to do is get Vos's army and just move it back to go and fight the French. But if I do that with a Spanish army here, I'm pretty sure I'll lose Turin to the Spanish, and of course I will then still have aggressors coming down there from the southeast corner of France, which will be increasingly annoying. And I also can't leave because of public order. As you can see there, the garrison is required to stop it rebelling. So it's not a very good situation right now. The French have just over a stack over there in Strasbourg. And right now I think they're probably one turn away from raiding my territory, 2 turns away from taking any of the 3 settlements really. Their force is strong enough to take any of them if they made the attack. And realizing this, I'm basically going to spend all of my money this turn on just recruiting units all over the place, so that if we do take an attack in the near future, we'll have the maximum chance we could possibly get of actually holding it off, because Vos might not get back in time. We will see how this new war with France goes, of course, in the next episode. The more success the Dutch found, the more distrusting their rivals became. Their rapid rise to power had stirred the envy of the more established powers of Europe, so much that they were now prime targets. Breaking their peace treaty, the French took the chance to reignite their war with the provinces, hoping to win back their huge concessions. Combined with the aggression from Spain, Dutch Europe was pressed between multiple hostile fronts. But the steadfast nature of their alliance with Britain, cemented by their shared king, and the pocketed nature of their West German city-states meant that the United Provinces was not out of the game yet. Mass recruitment of men began in late 1705, preparing for a decisive war in Europe. So thanks for watching. We'll get this war with France started in the next episode of Sinews of War.